Well, let's cross live now to Westminster and speak to the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting. Good to see you this morning, Wes. And should we start with Washington and Sir Keir Starmer and Donald Trump's meeting yesterday? How do you think it went?
I thought it was a fantastic success for Britain, for Ukraine and for our continent. What you saw yesterday were two world leaders, the President of the United States and the British Prime Minister, coming together, showing that they have clear common ground, common objectives, and have built a genuine mutual respect and friendship that will be absolutely critical for Britain's national security and our economic security. And what we saw spelled out yesterday in headline terms about the United States commitment to bringing an end to the war in Ukraine and working with us to safeguard our continent's security, the national security of both our countries, particularly the work that the British government is doing to secure our military presence in the Chagos, which is critical for both our countries and for the West more generally. I thought really encouraging. The final thing, which certainly took me by surprise, although I think there's been lots of work on the part of my colleagues going on behind the scenes, was the warmth and enthusiasm that the President showed in terms of improving the trading relationship between our two countries. Now, look, the warmth and friendship is really good and really encouraging. My friend, the Business and Trade Secretary, would say the hard yards are still to come in trade negotiations. We know that President Trump is a tough negotiator. President Trump said yesterday our Prime Minister is a tough negotiator. So there are hard yards ahead. But a great start to what is going to be an absolutely defining relationship between the President and our Prime Minister, because Britain and America, I mean, this is the most important alliance for our country. It is the bedrock on which our national security is built, and Britain's economic security is built as well. So a really important moment.
There's still concern over Chagos, isn't there? I mean, you can understand President Trump's position, but it's not costing them billions of pounds to go through with this deal. Is it really the right thing for the UK?
Well, our Conservative predecessors thought so, and in fact David Cameron, when he came in as Foreign Secretary, said, because I think he was aware the negotiations had been ongoing before taking post, said, hang on a minute, what's going on here? Paused that process, took a good look at it and concluded that it was in Britain's national security interest to continue those negotiations. This government, when we came in, picked up the baton. The Conservatives seem to now be suffering with collective memory loss, but while they try and deny that they were part of those negotiations, indeed started the negotiations, we've been getting on with the job. And look, President Trump has come in, looked at those negotiations, looked at the strategic importance of this to not just the United Kingdom, but to the United States and the West more generally, and has said he's content to follow Britain's lead in this area. There's still more work to be done, and the Prime Minister and the Foreign Secretary will update Parliament and the public as those negotiations continue.
Yesterday, Sir Keir Starmer flattered President Trump with a historic second state visit, an invitation from the King. Donald Trump said he was honoured by it. I was just wondering what you thought about that, because in 2017 you signed and you urged people to please sign and share a petition to prevent Donald Trump from making a state visit to the United Kingdom. Looking back, do you think you were wrong to do that?
Well, I definitely won't be doing that this time. But there's a serious point here, which is, as I say, the relationship between the United States and the UK is absolutely critical for our national security and our economic security. And as we've seen just in recent weeks, President Trump is central to this as well. So giving him the honour of a second state visit, as you say, it's historic. I think it's about cementing the importance of the UK-US special relationship and that relationship between President Trump and the British government and our country, because whether people like him or not, and whether people agree with him or not, and certainly we have our political differences because President Trump leads a right-wing Republican government in the United States. Keir Starmer leads a centre-left British government here at home. So, of course, there are going to be ideological differences, but the critical thing is that we build common ground in our national interests as the UK and our collective interests as the UK, the US and the West more generally. And that's what the invitation is about. People, I'm sure, will disagree with it in some parts of the country. People may even exercise their right to voice their disagreement and protest. But people should not forget that in doing so, they are exercising the very freedom and democracy that we are committed to defending with President Trump. If people enjoy Britain's freedom and democracy, as I think we do, we've got to make sure we defend it. And the relationship with the United States and the relationship with President Trump is absolutely critical to defending that freedom of speech, that right to take part in elections and democracy, the freedoms that we've taken for granted, to be honest, over many years now. It's fragile and we need to defend it, and that's why the relationship between Keir Starmer and President Trump, between the United Kingdom and the United States, is absolutely essential for Britain's economic and national security.
Is there anything that you feel slightly uncomfortable about when it comes to the Ukraine situation? Because we got sort of assurances that the United States will provide this backstop if we have troops on the ground in Ukraine as a sort of peacekeeping reassurance force. But that is based on the fact, isn't it, that he's signing a mineral deal today. So he's in effect saying we'll provide a backstop because we have financial, or we're going to have financial interest there. And if they didn't, perhaps they wouldn't.
Well, we've said consistently that Britain will stand with Ukraine, full stop. We think that's the right thing to do morally, to defend the freedom and democracy of our friends in Ukraine. There's also a huge amount of British self-interest in this because the front line in Ukraine is actually the front line for our continent, including Britain, against Russian aggression. So there's an awful lot of our own national self-interest in there with a moral defence of Ukraine, which we all feel very passionately about in this government and actually right across our country. But we've also said no decision about Ukraine without Ukraine. So it's also important today that President Zelensky is visiting President Trump, that those conversations are ongoing between the United States and Ukraine. And I think the point that President Trump has been making in relation to the minerals deal is that if the US is there and the US's interests are bound up with Ukraine, that could be to the mutual benefit of the US and Ukraine, but it also sends a very strong message to Russia and a deterrent to Russia. So this is an evolving picture. There's been a huge amount of diplomatic heavy lifting going on behind the scenes that the Prime Minister and the Foreign Secretary have been part of, working with our friends in Ukraine and our partners in France and across our continent, as well as our friends in the White House as well. So, this is a moving picture. I think what the Prime Minister said yesterday in Washington was important, which is giving President Trump credit for changing the conversation on Ukraine to how do we end the war and win the peace. And it's in everyone's interest that Ukraine wins this war and secures the peace, and that's what we're all working towards.
Ms Streeting, just before we let you go, you did come on today to talk to us about the return of the family doctor, and also you're hoping to end that 8 a.m. scramble for appointments, which we all know has blighted the health service for a long time now. How are you possibly going to fix this?
It's a big challenge, as with most things in the NHS, but the fact that we've just agreed a deal with GPs on their contract and on the reforms that will deliver the end to the 8 a.m. scramble. Actually, the first time a contract's been signed with GPs since the pandemic. So this is bringing an end to that dispute GPs have had with government, an end to collective action. This is a breakthrough moment that's going to deliver real results for patients, because with this reform and with this contract comes the reform that will deliver online access, appointment booking for patients up and down the country to bring the NHS into the 21st century, along with all the other services we have at our fingertips at the touch of a button. So we are delivering. We promised, by the way, when I came in back in July, that I'd put 1,000 more GPs onto the front line by the end of March. It's the end of February. We've already got well over 900, and I'll come back at the end of March to tell you if I kept the promise. I hope this reassures your viewers, who are understandably, to be honest, cynical about politics and politicians, given what we've all seen in recent years. I hope it reassures people that, as well as delivering abroad, as Keir Starmer did yesterday, he's also delivering at home. And I'm not going to overclaim victory here. There's still a hell of a lot more to do, but we are delivering our promises. Waiting lists are beginning to come down. We're putting nearly 1,000 GPs onto the front line. We're bringing in modern appointment booking. So step by step, week by week, month by month, we are getting on with the job of delivering change, and we know that ultimately GB News viewers will judge us on results. But I hope this gives people a bit of quiet optimism and hope that this Labour government is delivering the change that we promised at the last election.
Minister, good to see you this morning. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Take care.
Well, that sounds very... I mean, it sounds very positive. I have to say, he says he'll come back on the GPs. He'll come back and tell us if he's delivered or not. So
We'll hold
good.
him to that.
We will hold him to that.